So, after discussing these so-called precursors of Derrida, Nietzsche, Heidegger, and Sigmund Freud, there are a number of terms available to understand deconstruction. Either it's your of grammatology by Derrida, or you talk about writing and speech, or your article SSP. Unless you know these terms, it will be problematic to deal further. However, when you approach your prescribed text, it begins with the concept of structure. And concept of structure, that means Derrida starts his discourse over deconstruction by quoting this Western metaphysics. So let me tell you that deconstruction is not only deconstruction of metaphysical world, or it is going to be applied in one particular um, uh, discipline. Like it can be applied in society, in politics, in anthropology, in all disciplines, in all the human disciplines, as you may see the title, that in the discourse of human sciences. So what are the disciplines available in the human world? Everywhere this deconstruction can be applied. So noticeable thing is this, that he begins this discourse in the metaphysical world, then he moves in history, and then eschatology, in mythology, and in many other disciplines this can be further applied. For example, we have Foucault, and Foucault has made use of post-structuralist analysis, that means of Derridian analysis, and we have his notion of power, and that power is actually functioning on the whole analysis of post-structuralism, that means that means deconstructive in nature. So when we look at these terms, first and foremost, logocentrism and phonocentrism. So how to understand logocentrism and phonocentrism? Let me make it clear that logocentrism is not deconstruction, or phonocentrism is not deconstruction. What is the meaning of logocentrism? First, on wordly level, when you are talking about logocentrism, that means logos plus centrism. Logos, that means words, and centrism, that means the centered on word. So how meaning is centered on word, that is logocentrism. So meaning is centered in words, that means it is present in word. And phonos, as you may you must have gone through linguistics, so you are aware with the phonocentrism and phonemic transcription. So something that is related to sound system. So when there are logos, there are phonos. Written language, written symbols, the moment it is uttered, it becomes phonos. The moment it is spoken, it becomes phonos, right? So logocentrism, and the principal subcategory of logocentrism that is described by Derrida, it is phonocentrism. So literal aspect of logocentrism, once again I am repeating to make it clear, that means written words or written signs. And of course, when we come across a written symbol, written sign, when we read, when we go through this written language, we do find certain meaning of those written words. So that is how it is declared that entire system of thought, entire philosophy, entire sense of understanding that we derive in this world, it is logocentric in nature. Most important explanation I must do in terms of Heidegger's phrase, metaphysics of presence, and this particular phrase Derrida had chosen to explain properly logocentrism. That means another substitute you may use for logocentrism, it can be called as metaphysics of presence, and which is a phrase adopted or taken from Martin Heidegger. So what is this metaphysics of presence? Like metaphysics, of course, the world that is beyond this physics. Meta, that means beyond, and physics, that means the physical world. So when you are talking about a world which is not easily understandable, which is beyond this physical world, is metaphysical. And when you find presence of this metaphysical world through system of language, and this is how logocentrism equal to metaphysics of presence. I think concept is elusive, so I must emphasize once again that Derrida has chosen, he has selected this phrase metaphysics of presence from Martin Heidegger, which means that a discussion, a system is claiming that the metaphysical being can be present through this. So what is that system through which metaphysical being can be present? It is system of language. But mind it, this is not deconstruction. Rather deconstruction, that means rather Derrida, by categorizing the whole discourse of structuralism into logocentrism and phonocentrism, tries to make us understand that how language is a construction, or how language is not absolute, and how the dismantling of the whole discourse of Saussure is possible. So logocentrism is the term that Derrida makes use of to describe entire discourse of Saussure's linguistical world. That means written words. That means how we derive meaning out of the written system of language. And of course it becomes more functional the moment it becomes part of phonos, that means the moment they are uttered. So we may say so that implicitly or explicitly Derrida has given priority to phonocentrism over logos. Not Derrida has given, but the entire Western system has given priority to phonocentrism over logocentrism. Because for example, look, of course, whatever I'm uttering regarding deconstruction, it's not my origination. It is not that I have produced, right? I'm trying to explicate, I'm trying to explain. And what is the system through which I'm explaining all these things? It is the system of phonos. Definitely, I'm not writing each and every word and trying to make you understand that what Derrida has said. I may write 2 to 3 words, or I may make use of PPT, and there I may show certain terms like this is used. But most of the time when somebody is trying to explain some concept, there is use of phonos rather than logos. So who is given primacy over whom? Phonos are given primacy over logos. So the two categories of language, of linguistical world, logos, that means the written, and phonos, that means spoken. Phonos are given more importance over logos. Now these logos are capable of bringing into being metaphysical world, and this is how metaphysics of presence is adopted from Martin Heidegger by Derrida. Now when we are talking about metaphysics of presence, then once again we are required to go back to that Saussurian analysis. Why? Because Saussure has already, that means structuralists have already derived this conclusion that there is no such system which may claim for the existence of the entire truth. And if there is existence of metaphysical being, even it is through the system of language only. So we have set of philosophers, and you may keep in your mind as per your domain of understanding and as per your domain of knowledge. You may take examples from India also, from Western and from Eastern world, from both the worlds you may take examples. And I'm quoting those examples which this man Jacques Derrida has himself given. So you are prescribed David Law's edition, an article published there, and if you have that one, there is page number 108, and I think it's second page of your essay. On that second page of your essay, this SSP, you are going to have set of transcendental signifieds. So now what is this transcendental signified? Transcendental signified is again the typical notion of Derrida, that means typical Derridian term, which he makes use of to explicate logocentrism. So first and foremost, let me break all these things into parts, okay? And then I will accumulate all the things. So first and foremost, when you go to Hegel, Hegel talks about absolute idea. You come to Platonic idea, that means you know how Plato has done bifurcation of the metaphysical and physical world, and idea is there in the metaphysical world. You come to Aristotle, Aristotle talks about substance. And then you move ahead and you take example from India, so you have Buddhist Shunya, and you have many such terms you may find. So ages after ages, with the passage of time, many thinkers and many philosophers, they came, they existed, and they have defined metaphysical world as per their understanding. So the kind of understanding, the kind of explanation, and the kind of terminology is added. So what we may notice that time to time there is replacement of one philosophical idea by another. So just as we know the old difference between Plato and Aristotle, right? Plato did bifurcation of the physical and metaphysical, and Aristotle denies that bifurcation of physical and metaphysical, and he says that reality lies not somewhere else, but it is in the it exists in this phenomenon itself. That means in the environment itself, like God is not somewhere in the sky, God is not beneath the sky, God is not above you and below you. This ultimate force and power and the supreme power exists with you, around you, and it's up to you, like how are you experiencing. So this is how the difference exists between Plato and Aristotle. But what is here same thing is what, that both are believing in the existence of God, both are believing in the creator, or there is someone who is God, who can be referred as God. The most common term is God, right? So there is some unknown force or power, both are believing in this idea. Hegel also does the same thing, and that is referred as absolute idea. When you come to Kant replaces all these terminologies, and he gives eidetic reduction and transcendental reduction. So somewhere Kant also talks about that transcendental idea. When you take Buddha follows many such means of reduction, and when all are reduced, then you reach to Buddha Shunya. That means, absolute negation is absolute affirmation. So when nothing is left to describe, that nothingness turns into everything. So Shunya hi Purna hai and Purna hi Shunya hai. This is how we keep on explaining Buddhist conception of Shunya. So mind it, my target is here not to explain Aristotle and Plato and Kant and many other philosophers, but you may notice that in these examples, one is from east and another is from west, and the time period of these philosophers are varying, right? They existed during different times, but the common among all of them, that they believed in the existence of metaphysical being in their own way. So what we may say, that time to time there is replacement of metaphysical explanation, time to time there is replacement of the metaphysical existences, but metaphysics exists. That means metaphysics is present. So logocentrism can be well defined or well explicated, that it deals with the metaphysics of presence. So either you are talking about day-to-day reality, or you are talking about metaphysical being, or any such aspect which you want to exist, it exists through system of language. So words, they become term, and this is how these terms, some of the terms are called as transcendental signified. So now what is this transcendental signified? As the word transcendental, that means something which is beyond question. Transcendental in nature, that means something which is beyond question. Signified, already signifier and signified, that means meaning part. So some of the terms, some of the explanations, some of the ideas, they are unquestionable, they can't be questioned, and these terms are called as transcendental signified. As I gave you right now set of signifieds, and they all are of transcendental nature. As you cannot question Plato's idea, you cannot question Eko Brahma Ditya Nasti, and if you question, you become Nastik, like you become atheist, okay? So if you are questioning the ideas there in the Christianity, the ideas there in the Quran, or in Bhagavad Gita, so you just being categorized as theist, atheist, and many such labeling can be done, right? So meaning to say that often we common people, we do not tamper, we do not touch those ideas which come from the religious doctrines, which come from the our temples, from the religious world, from philosophical world, we do not question them. And all these unquestioned practices and all questioned terms, they are what? Transcendental in nature. And if they are transcendental in nature, they can be termed as transcendental signified. So mind it, Derrida makes use of this term transcendental signified. So how to, now I'm again taking three terms: logocentrism, metaphysics of presence, and transcendental signified. This logocentrism, meaning that is derived on the basis of written words, and this written words, that means they are capable, the territory or domain or the area which this logocentrism comprises in itself, it is of very vast nature, right? So logocentrism is myriad in nature. Logocentrism is something that cannot be unified conception. Its nature is various, right? Very vast. It consists of many such aspects, many such layers are here. So one is the social layer, another is the historical layer, and philosophical layer, and ultimately the metaphysical beings, they can be also present through this logocentrism. So we have not seen God, right? But if we are talking about God, for example, our Vedas, right? Entire Vedas are what? Logocentric in nature. So as per my understanding and knowledge, in Vedas we don't have description of God. Vedas are only Vak. That means only sentences are there. And if only sentences are there, that means only logocentrism, right? So if we refer Rig Ved and we are talking about production of or birth of God, out of the touch of God, how the flower and nature, Rabindranath Tagore in the entire Gitanjali, he talks about the birth of the flower and the objects of nature, and it is because of the touch of the feet of God, nature blooms. So how it happens? Is there any real physical beings in reality? Is there any physical description of a being who can be described with a kind of feature like legs and hands and nose and mouth like we people? No. Only Vak, only sentences are there. And Vedas are the seminal scriptures of India, right? And if you follow not less than God, your concept of God. So these Vedas, Vedic work, they are what? Transcendental signifieds. Shunya is transcendental signified. Aristotelian idea of substance is transcendental signified. Platonic idea is transcendental signified. Jesus is transcendental signified. Ram is a transcendental signified. Krishna is a transcendental signified. I hope now you may understand what do we mean by transcendental signified. Either you take a figure or you take concept, right? Something that is unquestionable, something that can't be doubted, something over which you cannot practice your skepticism. It is transcendental in nature. So when you take example from metaphysical world, it is transcendental signified or transcendental in nature. It is unquestionable. But mind it, along with this transcendental signified logocentrism and phonocentrism, we have another very important line, another oft quoted dictum from Derrida, that there is no outside the text. But before I take there is no outside the text, let me make a remark regarding phonocentrism, that Derrida was more skeptical about phonocentrism than logocentrism, and the reason was that there is logical priority to phonocentrism, because when you go back to Saussure and you just look at the Saussurean analysis, Saussure has already said that this meaning is arbitrary in nature. Meaning is given by society and convention. So it means meaning is never ever present in the word. It is never ever present in the sign system. And phonocentrism, when it helps in constituting, in transmitting meaning from one speaker to another speaker, so it is stated about phonocentrism that it depends upon speaker's intention, and to some extent it depends like how auditor receives it, right? How one listens, how it is taken by the listener. So phonocentrism, that is given foremost space in the world of Saussure, is itself creating here problem from the side of Derrida, because the claim that Saussure made, meaning is intrinsic, arbitrary in nature, provided by society and convention, and it is to some extent dependent upon the intention of the speaker and how listener takes it, how listener receives it, then how can you talk about sure foundation? Then how can you talk about surety in your ground? What about your notion of certitude? Because ultimately structuralism is targeted to have systematic discourse, systematization in the world. So now this skepticism which Derrida starts, it is more over phonocentrism than over logocentrism. However, this comparative degree can't be used for phonos and logos. Both are in a skeptical category, and this can be well understood by further explanation of there is nothing outside the text, or there is no outside the text. Just as I told you that logocentrism is defining extreme textualism, in the same way there is no outside the text is the example of the extreme textualism. What is this extreme textualism? Of course, text, textuality, textualism, and all this textualism, textuality can be well understood when we are having understanding of the texture of the text. So, if you take example of the sweater, definitely sweater is having a kind of a structure, and this sweater is not woven suddenly, or suddenly you don't have a coherent structure, coherent, beautiful, organized structure of a sweater, right? Definitely thread is there and knitting is done. So in the same way, when you look at a text is not written just in single moment. So you find syntactical structures, paragraph, and these paragraphs are making chapters, and chapters are making book, right? Making text. So these small units are creating text, and when you approach the texture of a text with the philosophy of Saussure, there is never ever metaphysical, there is never ever presence of that being, rather there is always absence of that being. How? A sign is having its meaning only in the presence of the another one. So Derrida calls, Saussure calls it as theory of presence, but Saussure calls it as theory of presence, but Derrida calls it as theory of absence. Like a word is not having, a sign is not having it signified when there is absence of the another one. Okay. So if you understand meaning of the day only in the presence of night, then one thing is clear, that day is not having meaning in its own signifier. It has its meaning only when there is presence of another set of signifier called night. Okay. So this is how this theory of presence is going to be changed into theory of absence. And when you enter in this theory of absence, and this very logic which creates uncertainty in the system of language from Derridian stance, and then you approach a text. So how far you can talk about definite meaning in a text? This is a question. So whatever you are approaching in a text as meaning, it is never ever final. It is temporary in nature. So it can never be coherent. It can be never certain. So when you take this phrase, there is no outside the text, it refers to extreme textualism. That means if each and everything exists in this world through this system of language, and language is codified, and there is a codifier. Language is codified and there is a codifier, and that codifier handles all the codes. So that it depends upon the attention of the codifier, that how that codifier is handling the particular code. Now my question that, or I want to throw light on this, that women from the very beginning, they are considered as inferior. I should say they are, or they were, or they are still to some extent. Means I never deny the changes or alterations which have taken place in terms of male and female, but still the notion of superiority and inferiority that is associated with male and female. So are men really superior, or are female really inferior? So or Dalits, are they really Dalit? Or you look at the caste system of India, many such examples you may have, like why so? You may ask this question, why so? So is it natural, or all these distinctions, all these descriptions, explanations are constructed, or they are structuralized? So when you are taking this phrase, there is nothing outside the text. You keep in mind that each and everything which exists in this world is one of the textures of the text. For example, if you take this entire universe as a text, all the planets and all these discovered countries, they are the textures of this text called universe, right? So each and every unit, each and every part of a total, right, it is like sign of a language system. Or you say like each and every happening in this world is known or explained through the system of language. So no such understanding takes to us which is not part of language. So if you talk about history, you take eschatology, you take metaphysics, you take social science, you take in social science various subjects, various disciplines like political science, any theoretical talk, day-to-day life conversation, any such thing that happens, that explicates something, that creates something, that is inscribed somewhere, it is through system of language. So there is no such thing which is not part of textuality, which is existing without help of language. So as I exemplified Buddhist Shunya, suppose that these systems, this system of logos and phonos are not available. May I explain this Buddhist conception of Shunya? May I approach Platonic idea? No, I cannot explain any philosophical idea if it is not existing to us through the logos, and if it is in the form of logos, only then it is in the form of phonos. So first of all, Derrida gives a logic that when you claim that no existence in this world is without system of language, and your system of language is functioning in such a uncertain way, then how can you talk about certainty, or how can you talk about transcendental signified? Then how can you talk about absolutism in language, or absolutism through this language? So when you take name of Jesus, you take name of Brahma, Vishnu and Mahesh, you take name of any system, any religious system, and the names popular there as God, you are always afraid in questioning the ideologies and principles dependent, or it is based upon these signifieds. Why you are afraid, or you just feel fear in questioning? right and wrong, virtues and vices, and this is how hierarchies are maintained, right? This is how hierarchies are maintained always in our world, in our life. So we are always scared of that.